My name's Tim Stanton, and I'm the Northeast guy in charge of spreading the word about scanning pens and what we're all about. And then Carrie, who I've known for 2 years now, we met in ATIA, and her organization, Da Vinci Center, and ours share the same mission, going out and drumming up excitement, getting teachers and kids and parents on the same page and productive as far as reading and literacy. So we met and said, she's introduced us to plenty of people and vice versa. So I was really excited when we came up with this idea. By the way, we're going to try and get this done within 35 minutes because we realize you're all busy and we want to make it productive. So we won't be having a long speech, but the quick intro and what we're going to cover is, so the name of the webinar today is Those Wonderful Words. And the whole point of this is to explain a little bit about who we are, what Carrie's all about, why teachers can benefit from what we have, but really get neck deep in tips and exercises and suggestions, so stuff that you can take away and use in the field. So I'm going to talk a little bit about us. I'm going to show you a very quick video, only a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then we're just going to dive in and talk a little bit. So some of you may be aware of who we are. If this is repetitive, we apologize. But again, we're Scanning Pens. We've been around since 2004 in the UK, but here for maybe about 4 years altogether. And headquarters in the UK, offices around the world. In the US, we're spread out around the country, but our headquarters is in Clearwater. And those two gentlemen on the left over there, Jack Churchill and Toby Sutton, our CEOs. Jack, by the way, little trivia question. His last name is Churchill because his great-great-grandfather was Winston Churchill. Now, we don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you the concept that he, who happens to be dyslexic, and we have a lot of team members on our group in the UK especially who are dyslexic. There's a lot of people that are, myself included, afforded a lot of advantages and given all the tools to be successful. He discovered this company through a contact in Sweden via Israel, but basically came up with an idea of taking the technology behind the scanning pen and applying it to the school market. So we have the text-to-speech device. Very simply put, think of a highlighter that's going to read back and speak back to you, aloud or via headphones to help kids get access. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, again, what we're all about. We have two reasons for being, two parts of our primary purpose is equity, something you hear about all the time, but we actually live it, making everyone able to reach potential, and then inclusion. So people think inclusion in terms of minority and so forth and so on, but ours is more about people who are, quote, fall into that concept of disabilities or are struggling with certain conditions, but we're all about access to the same curriculum, the same opportunities that everyone would normally have, regardless of if they're, quote, special needs or ADHD or discipline problem or English as a second language. So again, to talk a little bit more about that, again, Jack and our folks in the beginning was about dyslexia, still is, but we're not exclusively a tool for dyslexia. We're for everyone who struggles and to help them get access to the printed page. We're about the printed word. Everybody is convinced that, we talk to a lot of schools who say, well, I'm completely digital, not a problem, well, chances are you have a printed worksheet, chances are you have a curriculum, chances are that there's an IT or a district individual that wants you to use both the Chromebook and the printed page and everything, so we're a bridge to that. But we help kids with dyslexia, we help kids and adults with reading challenges, ESL, English language learners. Those with visual impairments and or hearing impairments. ADHD is something that also comes to play. And then, very important, we extrapolate and we the ripple effect also affects kids in gen ed, general education. Vocational ed, we can talk all day long about certain individuals that are using this under the chassis of cars to read manuals while they're doing their work. Gifted and talented, we could talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the point is, we make content accessible. We're able to differentiate and be flexible and meet kids at their own level. And then this all ends up building literacy skills. So for the individuals on this call, we are not here to replace what you do. We're here to support what you do. So any situation where a child has an accommodation for a human reader, we can come in, we can impact that, we can make it more efficient, and we can make you more efficient. So I'm going to now, fingers crossed.
Let's hope it works.
If I lose everybody, I'll apologize in advance. I'm going to show you a quick video. It's a 4-minute video, but we're only going to cover 2 minutes of it. And the reason I show it to you is it's not an infomercial. You hear pretty music, but it identifies and relates to the teachers you hear and the kids you see. By the way, this is a school in the Bronx, PS 91, where we did a pilot.
New York City consists of approximately 1.1 million students.
New York City consists of approximately 1.1 million students. We're the largest public district in the country.
Special education students.
We have approximately 200,000
special
education students.
So as a special education, sounds like it's doubling on you.
Okay.
Some students need things read to them. Some students need things written out or directions read differently. We gave the students these various questions about do they like reading? Is reading difficult for them? Do they like to read on their own? Do they like to be read to? And they all answered quite honestly.
No student wants to have to raise their hands. It comes a point, no matter how comfortable they are in the classroom, that they do feel embarrassed to ask again. It is hard to always meet the needs of all my students when they need help.
We want our students to have access, all students to have access to their curriculum.
And what was amazing about this partnership is it was a great, wonderful collaboration between the teachers and the speech and language department, where we really were able to show this school how through the use of technology we can address our literacy initiatives.
While sometimes we can recommend some very intricate pieces of technology, the Reader Pen is more simple, and so it can be integrated more easily into the classroom. It allows them to use the educational materials such as regular textbooks and worksheets and reading books that their peers are using.
So many of the students have not only built up their confidence through the Reader Pen, but also are becoming more independent. Every morning the kids come in, they know that their pens are right in front of the classroom with the headphones next to them. They grab their headphones and they get started with their morning work.
What I like most about the pens is you're like a highlight, and they can read for you because sometimes we get stuck on a word, and when you help, so the Reader Pen helps me to understand the word and the definition.
Vocabulary is a really big piece across the district that we really have been working on throughout speech and language therapy, and I really think that the Reader Pen is a wonderful tool. Anytime they come across a difficult word, instead of asking me what it means, they use their pen to scan it, and they move on.
So I apologize if there was some echo there. It sounds like there was for some people, but I'll be back. People hear me okay?
Yeah, that was for me, but I
Okay.
picked up the gist of it anyway, since I know.
So yes, of course. So, but anyway, like in that that group there, you saw special ed teachers, you saw speech language, you saw kids that were talking about independence, access, and then not necessarily needing the help all the time. So we're not here to replace the teacher. We're just here to move the class along. There's something maybe you also heard as well is, teachers grateful that they get a chance to manage the classroom and finish the lesson. So couple of other points here to really make clear, and then I'm going to hand it over to Carrie in a moment, is it's a mid-tech device, as in plug and play, as in very easy. And your kids are going to grab this and just start jumping on it as is. Although we don't recommend you do that. We kind of walk them through a little bit. There's no Wi-Fi required, completely portable, so you're not dependent on a network that's going to crash on you. I mentioned classroom management, and then I also mentioned time management. So in real time, they see a word they struggle with. Not only can they get the pronunciation, they can also get the definition, because we come loaded with dictionaries. Big thing is the screen time. You know, we can create a routine that gets kids off a screen. Be huge in terms of just managing this chaos that we deal with, whether you're in the classroom or, I don't know, you're going to have conversations with parents at home where they turn around and say, you know, I'm sitting next to my daughter and she is struggling, and it's mom, what's this word? Mom, what's this word? Mom, what's this word? Over and over and over again. This will alleviate a lot of this. So there's a lot of things we could talk about for ad nauseum, but more importantly is Carrie incorporates a lot of things, and we're one part of a toolbox. So we're not here to finish and complete everything that you could possibly do from A to Z. We're just here to support in real time. So I wanted to, at this point, kick it over to Carrie, and she talks about what she does, what she experiences, and then more specifically how she incorporates what we have as part of a whole solution. So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, it certainly does. And I think that it's a key for us to talk about the fact that we're all about tools and we're all about accessibility. And I think that one of the reasons why many of us go into this field is because we do love words, and we do love reading, and we do love teaching, and we do love language. And you know, oftentimes the population that we are dealing with doesn't always have that same relationship. So what Tim and I wanted to do was to not talk about just, hey, this is a great tool and let us tell you all about it, but really to talk about like how we incorporate it into the things that we do as part of our system. It's not something that everybody uses, but it certainly is something that we want to increase the accessibility for all students. So just going to take you through a quick thing. I know we don't have too much time. Tim, I'm going to ask you to be kind of my time monitor on this.
Sure.
So keep me moving, because I can tend to talk a lot without being stopped. So I think, as I was saying, our mission as educators in whatever capacity that we're coming to this, and that could include, I know Elizabeth said she was a speech and language professional. We're talking about classroom teachers. We're talking about reading teachers. We're talking about special educators. And we're even talking about parents, you know, being part of this education team and as mentors. And so I feel like it's important for us to discuss like what our long-term, our overarching mission here is to have in schools and in education is to build a positive relationship for our students with text and language and the written word. And so when language or access to language becomes a barrier, then all learning can tend to stop. And we're not really sure exactly where that breakdown can be, because a lot of students keep that very personal and very, you know, to themselves. So what I really try to promote is that although we may love learning and we may love language, it's that student's relationship or their perception with that that we have to be mindful of. So, you know, I include in the first slide that our mission as educators and as mentors and whatever it may be is, and Tim, I like that you use the example of being under a car with the manual. You know, more and more, you know, people, no matter what career or path you choose in life, you have to have some type of relationship with the printed word, with the written word, also with language in general. So if there are tools that can promote and support our independence, we're all for that. And so we want to talk then again about just depending on who we are, whether we're the teacher or the parent, when you think about, when you ask people like, how did you learn to read? You ever say, oh, I learned to read in school, or I learned to read, I guess, maybe around first grade, or they really don't know. And that we do know that even though reading isn't a natural skill, most of us the larger majority of us are going to learn to read when provided with some form of formal education. We're not here to decide on what the best way for that is, or what the best tools for that is, or what kind of program you're using, but just by being in a formal schooling type environment, most people are going to learn how to read. But we can't always recall how that happened and when that happened. But we can talk about when reading doesn't come so easily, right? And that it's something that is so profound that we have found, especially as we talk to our adult learners and our people who are coming back who have struggled with the written word and have been able to share what that experience has like, or maybe some more articulate younger people. And it is whether when we sit, I find a lot of times educators will sit with students, or they'll sit with me as a consultant, and they'll say, well, he can read. Well, he can read. Well, I've seen him read. He seems to be able to read. And then we go and we speak to the student, or we look at data, or we talk to them as an older adult, and they say, oh no. Like for me, what you saw or what you interpreted as me reading was a painful experience. And I developed a persona. Some of our students will develop this persona of, I'm not interested, or I'd rather do something else, or they'll try to be so good at something else that it'll take some of the pressure off their relationship and their perception of their relationship with the printed word. I do remember my nephew, who's now in his 20s, but when he was young and developing his skills, he was in first grade, and I, as the aunt, was kind of going, something's not right there. And, you have to tread lightly, or you won't be invited to Thanksgiving dinner if you start telling people things about their kids, and there might be something wrong. So, I would just kind of pepper in some thoughts about maybe there's something there. And the feedback I would get from the parents was, oh, he'd just rather play baseball. He'd just rather be outside. He's just not motivated because he likes to do other things. And this was in first grade. And about midway through first grade, he went to get his eyes checked at the eye doctor, and then he went to the ophthalmologist, and they definitely looked deeper into his eyes. And he was given glasses, not because of a dyslexia thing, but just he was given glasses. Well, in the middle of first grade, when we think about like how many students are actually fluently reading in first grade, we don't even have to come up with a number, but first grade is where stuff happens, where the magic really starts to happen, and children are starting to gain a relationship with words and reading text, either positive or negative. But it was around January of first grade, and the parents who kept saying to me, he's not interested, that's why, he's just not motivated, he'd rather be doing something else, called me the day that he came home with his glasses, and he ran right into his room and picked up a book, and he said, oh, maybe now I'll be able to read. So they were perceiving that he's just interested in other things. But this first grader in the middle of first grade was already feeling an obstacle, or whatever it was for him. And he was already feeling that when I get these glasses, that obstacle will be removed. So it may not be something that is real. They maybe are in the right place for developing their skills with reading, but it is very private, and it can be it's all about perception with some cases. And we should be mindful, empathetic with that when reading does not come easily. And the fact of the matter that we as teachers typically love reading. We have a positive relationship with words, even if we're teaching in a special area, even if we're doing social studies or science and we're up in the high school. The reason why we chose that content or that reading career, that educational career, is because we had an affinity. People don't typically go in to teach something that they don't like. I'm not the strongest of math students. I can hang, I'm decent, but I'm not going to go become a math teacher because that's not my love. You go to something that you have at least an affinity for, or perhaps in Jack Churchill's case, you go into a field to try to solve a problem and make it better, so you have an understanding of something. But those people who go in to teach reading or in special education, it's because they want to problem solve with people, but they likely had a pretty decent relationship with reading. So it's very hard to teach someone something that came naturally to you, because when you go back and you think about it, like, well, how did I learn to read? There wasn't necessarily this process that you can recall as an adult. So we really have to think about what does that struggling reader look like my nephew, who didn't have dyslexia, by the way, and the glasses had nothing to do with his actual reading process. But when you think about, I think there's a big issue here that our community at large, our educational community at large, a problem that needs more solving, because what the struggling reader looks like could be any one of these students. It's not about necessarily words on paper and scores on a test. There's so much more to it than that. And the more that we can figure out the pathology and where that struggling reader, how that struggling reader manifests his issues in class across the board in his learning, is really integral to how we work with them and how we help problem solve with them, how we help help them gain access to text, to the written word, or to the spoken word. The more we know, the better we'll be able to gather an arsenal of tools that include, yes, techniques for instruction, tools that include curriculum, but also tools that include things like scanning pens, because while we're building these skills and developing these skills for these students, the more that we can provide access, independent growth and access to the printed word, the more those children will come to the table for us. So we have to understand each of these children and these examples of these children and what their persona or the complexity of their profile brings to the discussion about how does this impact their relationship with the written word? How does it impact their relationship with reading it, with integrating it, with comprehending it, and with producing it as well. So we look at things. So here's our charge. This is what we're doing over at Da Vinci, is we spend a lot of time working with districts and parents and teams and students to help them determine the why, or the formula for the why. It's not always just one thing. And dyslexia, of course, is right up there. And that one, quite honestly, has had so much research and so much instruction. And if you're involved in the Dyslexia Association, there's been 100 years of research. We know what we're doing. We know what works with Orton Gillingham like instruction. And we know how we can make changes, and we're using science and data to continue that journey. But we're also looking at things like ADHD and central auditory processing disorder and cognitive impairments. And of course, there's a huge new wave that we're really exploring in the English language learners, in the field of English language learning, to really say, how do these variables, for example, and they're not the only ones, but these are examples of variables that also have to be talked about. And if you look specifically even at the cognitive impairment area and where we are with that and what their relationship, students with a complexity of a profile that includes some type of cognitive impairment, then yes, I definitely can, Elizabeth, give some examples of IEP goals, although that's going to be up to your district to, that's okay. You can stop me anytime.
No way. That's what we live for.
No, feedback. And it's something that perhaps we can do as a follow-up as well. It really does depend on your district as well, but we can kind of rumble around with that a little bit too. Excellent. So what we wanted to do was, what we were talking about, understanding the complexity of the profile will help us, as I said, not only to work on developmentally building their functional relationship with reading. That's okay, Elizabeth, all good. But also to break these barriers of accessibility. I had a student a couple of years ago, 7th grader, coming to the center and getting some support with her dyslexia. She was involved in a pretty rigorous Orton Gillingham-based program. And at some point we were having a conversation, and the John Green's book, The Fault in Our Stars, came out, and the movie was coming out. And she had said something to me about all her friends sitting around the lunch table, and everybody was already talking about the book. And she's like, you know what, I can't, I'm going to wait till the movie comes out because I'm not comfortable reading that yet. And of course, my head wanted to explode. And I was like, no. You can already have a relationship with this. Whether it be something like scanning pens that you can read and feel feel that safety net of I've got something to help me if I stumble, or even something like recorded books where she could just listen to it. I don't want students to ever feel like there is any type of barrier to the accessibility that they're feeling, because that wasn't coming out in the classroom. That was occurring at the lunch table. That was her social relationship with her friends, that she wasn't able to have this conversation while they were all excited about reading this book. She was out of that conversation because she did not feel as if she was able to get accessibility to that. And so right then and there, you see, it's not just about what's happening in the classroom, but what is happening with that child in their whole life, like my nephew. So our job is to really demystify that, which is what we did with this girl. And we understand, we kind of spoke to her about the type of text that she can engage with independently and the type of text that she can engage with in other ways. And what, at the end of the day, if we can finish their educational journey, their academic journey through their traditional education and help them learn how they learn best. That's our tagline at Da Vinci, to help students learn how they learn best. And I kind of slanted that and italicized that word to have that double meaning of that word, meaning I want to help them to learn how they learn best, but also for them to understand how they learn best, so they can go forth with whatever tools they need in their brain belt. Instead of tool belt, we call it a brain belt, in their brain belt, so that they can, like Batman or Batwoman, just whip out the tool they need and say, for that, I'm going to use this. And for that text, I'm going to use that. And for this text, I can go it alone. And that is a big win. That's a big win. And that, I feel, is our ultimate job, to demystify that. So what we wanted to do real quickly before we get out of here, and anybody, I know we don't have a ton of time, but any of these strategies, I wanted to give you guys something to walk away with, that you could take with you. But if anybody wants to, find us, through this presentation, we can go do a deeper dive. We're happy to help. But I wanted to look at different levels and give you some ideas for that, and we'll incorporate the scanning pens into that. So we start really back at the beginning with words, and we try to include a purpose, of course, with anything, but the first thing that we do is rapid naming. So if you want to build a relationship with words, if you want to break down the barriers with words, we start before the printed word, and we just start by building these rapid naming activities, skills for students through fun activities. It's meant to build fluency, yes. It's meant to build retrieval, word retrieval. It's what helps build word retrieval is a really sound information storage in your brain, so that if you have a nice file drawer up here with words and language stored in nice little files, it's easier to access. If everything's just tossed in like a giant tossed salad, like sometimes I feel, or my pocketbook might look like, if I have a messy bag and you ask me to find some chapstick, it's going to take me a few minutes. Yet the person who has a very organized little purse might be able to go, oh, sure, I have a case for that. So the quickness and the easiness of retrieval. And of course, to build vocabulary as well. So we start right back at the beginning with just naming activities. And when we start layering things like name as many colors as you can think of, we'll start with something basic, and we start with things that they know. You don't want to start with something that names of states or names of countries that they have to search for. Just something basic like colors. And then we can move to things like desserts, and we can move to things like sports, so we can move to things like names, boys' names, or look around your table at lunch. We try to help them start to figure out, how do you categorize and store? We might start with animals and then start to categorize and say animals in winter or animals that you see in the zoo. And we help them to create these virtual file folders. And then we can actually move on to the activity we have listed here. I used to drive my son and my niece to preschool. He's now 20 years old, but I used to drive them to preschool, and we used to do remember this activity from, I think it was the Electric Company or Sesame Street, which is one of the two, but it was, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. And we would just go through, and I would say, okay, so we have banana, sun, pencil, leaf. Which one doesn't belong? And the kids in the car would start to go, leaf. And I'd have to ask them, why? Because it's green. Okay, great. And then they go, wait, what about pencil? Well, wait, why pencil? Because I was thinking that it was going to be one of these three, Well, leaf and bananas and sun you can find in nature, but pencil you wouldn't. It's real. We used to do this with our preschoolers. So it's really, really exciting to see what they'll come up with. It's just practice naming and playing with words before the printed word is even there. What I was mentioning before about categories, this is called category swap. But as we start doing the naming activities like animals in winter, animals at the zoo, animals you'll find in the jungle, we're teaching them how to create these file drawers. And we might say something like desserts. Let's think of as many desserts as we can. And if we were live in an audience, I'd ask you to tell me some, but I don't have a lot of time. But we can do a lot of dessert. Then we might take one thing. Let's take something like it's not showing up here, an ice cream. So if I said, now let's take one item out of the category, ice cream as a dessert. And now let's do a category swap and name all the categories it belongs in. Things that are cold, things that melt, things that come in flavors, things that you eat in the summer, things that are dairy. So we'll play with categories and then we do the category swap. And again, it brings it to another level for us. Our next activity, we're now moving through and getting a little bit more out of the naming activities, but now we're trying to sort and we're trying to teach them how to store. And now we're looking at vocabulary. This one is called Word Blast. And this is now getting into word layers. And what we do with this is we're not so in the heavy realm of vocabulary where we're going to start giving you the definition of conflagration or the definition of indeterminate. We're really looking at really basic words like fire, track, check, cross. These are lower level tiered words that we have a very positive and common relationship with. Students do as well. But what they don't start to develop is that multiple meaning and more of those more complex layers. So fire, for example, is not going to be a word that we're going to teach through vocabulary. But the different layers of relationships that we can do with these basic words, and we want to do them quickly. So we call it a word blast because of that. We want to take a word, we want to blast it apart. And when you blast, you do it quickly, you explode it, and we want to have a blast. So we want to have a lot of fun. So we'll take a word like fire and we'll just roll it around. We'll rhyme it first, fire, higher, liar, wire. And then we'll break it into parts, fire. There's 3 phonemes. We'll then write the word up on the board and we'll take it apart orthographically, looking at the long vowel sound and the silent E, and we'll mark it up as a vowel consonant E. And then we'll think next about the ways we hear the word. So fire, like songs, compound words or phrases. So campfire, fire truck, fire person, fire drill, fire pit, fireplace. Come on, baby, light my fire, or fire in the hole, or fire away. Or your coach might say to you, man, you were on fire today. Or perhaps saying something like, come on, everybody, let's get fired up. So we're talking about different relationships and how we use that word and building an awareness. And then we can go back from that and get to this visual where we're saying, well, we're talking about, gentlemen, fire your engines. We're talking about starting. When we say fire in the hole or fire away, we're talking about shooting. When we're talking about a campfire or a fire pit, we're talking about flames. When we're talking about getting fired up or fire up the action, or man, you were on fire today, you had a lot of energy, you were really energetic. So there's a lot of layers to that. So we want to play with words this way. How are we doing, Tim? Are we done on time, or?
About 5-10 minutes, we're fine.
Excellent, awesome. So this layer for this, and I really want to make sure we get to our scanning pens work, because this is where this all happens. So at Da Vinci, we do something with our students, just like I said with that 7th grader that I worked with when she said to me, I'm going to wait for the movie because I can't read that book yet. I'm not comfortable. I was like, blah. So we came up with this rule of 3. And as the slide says, we want to create a safe and an individualized experience for our students with reading. We want them to learn how they learn best. We want them to understand their relationship with text and to be able to understand that there's a multitude of ways that they can access print. I know we learn that and we do that as adults, but we want to start that learning as early as possible. So our rule of 3, we usually do this with the parents, but we can also do this with our teacher colleagues. Our rule of 3 is read to self, read with someone, listen to text choices. And so with that, we want to build that read to self. With the parents, we'll say to them, try to have that rule of 3 choices. Let me go back to this slide, for the week. Whatever your rules of the house are, that you want them to read every day, or you want them to read 5 days a week, whatever it be, incorporate this rule of 3 where the students have 3 choices. This also builds a relationship with the parents as well and learning. So read to self is there is text available, that you have text available to you, the students, that they are able to read to themselves. It's appropriate text level with a high interest to them. If they're older students, it should be decodable. We're looking for 80 to 90% decodable by the student. So we want to make sure that it is at a level that they can access independently. You can go to High Noon Publishing and get high level, low level readers with high interest. So it looks like a chapter book. So it's not, they're not reading younger looking readers when they're up in the middle grades or above, but you want to have them working at that level. We're building their decoding skills there, and Scanning Pens is awesome for them here, because no matter how, when you get it to 80, 90%, that means there's going to be 10 to 20% of the words that they're going to be unfamiliar with. And if we can build that safety, it's okay. You don't have to worry about being able to read every word. You got your scanning pen with you. They'll be more willing to tackle some of this if they know what the purpose and the mission is. So read to self, we want to make sure to keep it safe and keep it independent. We have appropriate text with a high interest level, and we have scanning pens to tackle the words or text that we're not familiar with just yet. Or read to someone, we usually tell parents to say, if your kid really wants to get to Harry Potter and they're not there yet, then maybe you select some text that you guys are reading together. It doesn't have to be at the level of Harry Potter if they're really not there yet. It could be something between that independent reading and that way out of the park reading where, it's just way above them. But here we're saying we want to build a relationship that, especially with the parents, it's so awesome, because what we're going to say is you're going to do all 3 of those things during the week. During the course of the week, you're going to read to self, read to someone, and read independently with some type of the next slide, which will be audio text. But the students then have some control. So you can say, all right, so it's Tuesday night. We don't have a lot going on tonight. Let's do our reading. But now it's Wednesday night, and you got to bring someone to wrestling and someone to football, and somebody's got to go to dance, and mom and dad are really taxed. So tonight is not going to be the read to someone. We don't want to make access to print require someone. So if we say during the course of the week, you're going to have a read to self moment, a read to someone moment, and a read on your, listen to text moment, it gives some flexibility. It also gives some control to that student who's going to say, Mom, I did read to myself and I did listening. Tonight is my read with someone. It really does help that conversation be a little bit of back and forth. And both parents are able to say, hey, I read with you 3 nights tonight. It's your turn to read to self. So there's agreement. And then on the student side, it's like, hey, Mom, you haven't been available for me. This is the only one I have to do left. So it does help build that relationship. And our students really like that. And then our last one is our listening to text. And with here, anything is possible. You can choose what interests you. It's up to you. The students can listen to any text. And again, even if they're listening to text and they have a reader in front of them, that they can stop. They can use the scanning pen to record some great phrases that they heard. So if they're listening to text and they actually have the text in front of them, the people who are reading text usually have a very dramatic way of doing it. So sometimes there are certain things I find myself, I listen to audiobooks a lot, and there's a lot of times that I'm like, I wish I had that again. I love that phrase. So you can really incorporate scanning pens here too, to be able to say, if I have this text, I'm listening. wait, what was that line? Let me go back. Let me scan, save, store, explore that, and create, change it over to a PDF. So I think in all three of these formats, Scanning Pens really works. So we just wanted to make sure that we gave you guys some real tangible activities to do to build this healthy relationship words and break down those barriers to access to either the oral language and the written word and text. And I hope you guys got a few fun examples. Please feel free to email me here if you want me to go into any more detail about any of those activities we shared and some more examples of how we use Scanning Pens at the center. I know, Tim, you had some great ideas about museums and scavenger hunts and all that. And, there's just so much we could do and more that we can share.
There was, where was I? Down here. Yeah, here we go. It's funny when Carrie and I were talking about putting this together, we were finishing each other's sentences with things like that. That I Spy she had another name for it, the naming game. You take 6 or 7 kids and give each of them the pen and then play that naming game, and they could sprint around the room. And if you identify each one with a little piece of paper in front of it, chalkboard, doll, computer, whatever. And I'm not the teacher here. I'm just the guy who listens to teachers. But, you sprint over, scan it, come back, present it. The next thing maybe ring a bell or do some kind of jumping jacks. You got kinetic, you have emotion, you have hearing, you're having fun. One thing you talked about, Carrie, I just realized, relationship with the family, reading time. You talked about doing stuff. I'm just made me think, if I was some kid at home and I wanted to talk to my dad a little bit more, he likes baseball, I like baseball. He's reading this book about Babe Ruth. There's going to be stuff in here I have no clue about. I'm a good reader, but I might struggle with some things. And then I can use the pen in real time to maybe access something. There's something here, hopefully you can see, reading school trips. How many times are kids at the museum and there's things that they have to record and think about and read for a report when they're gone, when they come back? Give the child who struggles the chance to join with everybody else so he doesn't feel less than or not part of. And then how about lunch? They're out to lunch with friends. How many kids turn around and they hand out the menu, they can't read the menu? It's a question, I'll just have what she's having. Cheeseburger sounds good. That's the only thing.
Now you're saying Harry Met Sally, right? I'll have
exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Just, the coleslaw on the side, potatoes. Right there. But when you talk about, lastly, and then I'll shut up, is that idea of, in some cases, the special needs class in that New York school ended up doing the cool thing and having the kids from the Gen Ed walk by and go, what's that they're playing with in there? Next thing you know, the kids from the Gen Ed class are teaching the kids from the special needs are collaborating and teaching the kids from the Gen Ed about the pen. So we can talk all day long. We're very passionate about it. So
yes, we can.
But you guys are busy. We don't want to keep you too long, but we'll record this.
We appreciate you all coming and spending a little time with us.
Yep.
And any kind of feedback that you can give us, just like Elizabeth did. I'm gonna plan to do that. Ooh, vocabulary bingo. Oh, see, now we're sharing. Oh, yes, excellent.
Sharing is caring.
Twitter chat as well, Tim, to share with that. So please share with us, and I am gonna see if you share. I don't know if we can get email addresses or whatever, but I certainly can put out there some ideas we have for IEP goals, or if anybody wants to reach me, you have my Twitter handle or my email was on the presentation, which I think, Tim, you said you're going to make, it's going to be on demand at some point?
Yeah, we're going to record this and we're just going to
put
it out right after this, and everyone will be on the same page.
All right, so we are changing our name to the Da Vinci Collaborative, but for now, I'm just going to plop in my email in case anybody has any questions. We would love to be able to help you out, and I know one of my colleagues, Jane Riley, is on the call, so she's been listening and hearing, so she'll be able to handle all that as well. So there I am. If you need me, we could share a lot more and some of the success we do and how we progress monitor with some of the activities that we talked about today. Thank you all for joining. It was great fun.
Thanks, guys. Carrie, thank you. We'll talk soon. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much.
Sure.